Well, good evening and happy Monday to all of you. Here we are on KC Sports Tonight, a June 23rd edition of the show. I'm Mark Poulose, joined by the great and very knowledgeable Gabe Swartz. I think I'd put it up, his knowledge of Kansas City sports up against almost anyone in Kansas City. Gabe, coming in with a hype like that, what do you think?
It feels like well over-deserved praise. I don't know if I live up to that billing, but I'll do my best to provide some insights on this wide array of topics on our rundown.
Gabe is always dialed in. He writes unbelievable stories for our webpage. See those on kctv5.com. But we have 5 big topics to talk about today. 3 of them with the Chiefs, 1 with the Royals, and 1 with the KC Current. But we're going to start with the big topic of the day. The Kansas City Chiefs won 2 out of the last 3 Super Bowls. They're trying to get back to a 4th straight. They have set their dates for training camp. It's set to begin on Tuesday, July 22nd, but that practice is closed only to season ticket members. The first one that's available to the public is Wednesday, July 23rd. The team is going to hold 14 practices up at St. Joe before their first preseason game, and then 3 more there after that. Gabe, training camp is here. We're going to talk about football, not talk about dates. We're going to talk about the offense first. All offseason long, we've heard about how the Chiefs really want to get back to the deep ball. That's a big thing that they've emphasized since the Super Bowl. When we saw Patrick Mahomes going deep to Xavier Worthy, and this year at training camp and at OTAs, the wide receivers do look good. So I'm going to start the offensive wish list discussion. Do you think the Chiefs actually will get back to the deep ball? And kind of with that, what do you maybe kind of think of the suppression of offense that we've seen with the Chiefs here in the last couple of years?
Yeah, I know that it was going around the fantasy football circles of Twitter this weekend. The people diving into the research and getting people set for what's coming up with this season, of the chart of where Patrick Mahomes ranked in terms of his offensive output relative to the rest of the league, and how it's not necessarily he had been a top 6 quarterback, at least in terms of fantasy football production, which is clearly not the same level of play as being a best NFL quarterback and winning games and leading your team to victory, which is what ultimately matters the most to fans. But the last 2 seasons have been underwhelming, at least for him, and that's just because he's been outside of the top 10 in terms of that level of output. And I've heard you discuss it, I've heard Marlia discuss it, in terms of hearing the off-season outlook of Patrick Mahomes talking about, I've got to throw it deep. And did he have the epiphany at the end of the Super Bowl of, like, I just have to give Xavier Worthy a shot? Did they finally get onto the same page of figuring something out? Because we saw missed deep balls against the 49ers in the middle of the regular season. We saw it several times throughout the latter stage. And then one of the better deep ball performances was on Christmas Day against the Steelers, and even that was Justin Watson, who's no longer on the roster. So I guess we're kind of in wait and see mode. We're kind of in let's see whether it changes or not. I think that the health of the receiving core, I think that the availability of Rashee Rice, due to whether there's a suspension or not, ultimately is going to play a significant role into what the offense looks like. But the last 2 seasons, it has been more methodical, and it has not. And that's what we were saying throughout last football season, was that it didn't seem very sustainable to run offense with no explosive plays, and they weren't getting explosive plays in the pass game. The run game was effective, but it wasn't explosive either. And so I think that's the number one thing to look for all season long. And honestly, training camp is not going to show us anything, because last year at training camp we were talking about all 3 of the same guys that we're going to talk about this year: Rashee Rice, Hollywood Brown, Xavier Worthy, being like, oh, the deep ball could be back. So to me, we're not going to have judgment on this until probably the middle of September, because even against the Ravens, it looked decent on opening night last year.
I think what's been most interesting to me is just how much the Chiefs have talked about wanting to get back to the deep ball, but we know the NFL is such a secrecy league. Like, they don't want to expose their plans to anybody. They literally try to give you as little information as possible, and they're going out there, oh, we want to go deep, we want to go deep, we want to go deep. It kind of makes me think, is like, do they want us to believe that? Because they don't often tell us exactly what they're going to do. I mean, in such a competitive industry, they really try to suppress and hide their plans. They don't just come out and tell you, oh, we're going to go deep, and that's how we're going to beat you, because they want to have the element of surprise. But one thing I'm really looking forward to at training camp is just it really is going to be, how does this offensive line shake out? Because I think so many of these offensive issues that we've seen over the last couple of seasons really has to do, like we saw in the Super Bowl, we saw all last year, the way that the Chiefs had to win. They were in so many close one-possession games, and then honestly, like Patrick Mahomes showed his most elite skill, in my opinion, was his just ability to play the game and find a way to win in those close games. Because if you put a lot of other quarterbacks behind that offensive line and behind just the production that they were getting, I don't know if that team would have won 15 games. But when you have Patrick Mahomes behind center, it instills confidence. And I really want to emphasize this, because we see Patrick Mahomes, such a great thrower of the football, such a great dissector of the defense. But I really think his best skill is simply winning, just finding a way. You hear this all the time, athletes, find a way, find a way, find a way. Did it look pretty last year? No. Did Patrick Mahomes maybe have statistically the worst season of his career? Yes. Did the Chiefs have the most wins in franchise history last year? Yes. Yeah. And it was with one of the worst offenses that we have seen in the last couple of years. And I also think there really are a couple factors at play as to why we've seen the dip in production. And it really has to do with that offensive line, injuries to the wide receivers, and all of a sudden you can just key in on the Chiefs' key players, and then the other guys aren't getting open. Next thing you know, they're scoring 22 points a game last year, and the fans are going, what is going on? We have the best quarterback in football, and we're struggling to score points. I also want to see kind of how the running game shakes out this year, because we know Isaiah Pacheco is, he's a great player. They sent Kareem Hunt out to speak to the media. That's usually something that they do with leaders. But Gabe, this is something you and I have talked about a fair amount, is they really don't have a speed threat out of the backfield. Do you kind of see that as maybe a key to helping unlock maybe more potential of this offense?
Well, yeah, and I think that the two things that you were just talking about with the offensive line and the run game, those are the two things you can point to last season as to why they didn't throw the ball deep. Like, yes, they attempted to, and they weren't very successful when they tried, but they didn't get to try it very often because either teams were not respecting the run game, because they knew, oh, okay, if the Chiefs are going to run the ball for 3.5, 4 yards a carry, never break a 10-plus yard run, but it's just, if they hit a big one, it's 7 or 8 yards, and dang, it's 2nd and 2. Teams weren't scared of that, and at the same time, they weren't scared of the offensive line because of all the issues at left tackle, and so along those lines, if the offensive line is fixed and if the run game is a little more explosive, then you afford yourself a little bit more of an opening to try things, throwing the ball deep. And so I think that those are, as much as anything, probably going to be the indicators of whether they are effective throwing the ball deep, because when the Chiefs had their most successful downfield passing attack, it was when the offensive line was more reliable. And so
they also have one of the best wide receivers who ever has played football.
Yeah, and every time that every time that it then broke down was because of overwhelming injuries to the offensive line. And I think that you could say that last year it was just one critical spot in the 2020 season, the 2021 February 2021 Super Bowl lost the Bucs. It was just so many different guys at so many different positions, and everybody knows that. But yeah, I think that. I mean, you're familiar with him because he spent a little bit of time at the U, but Brashard Smith is interesting. I'm fascinated to see what Elijah Mitchell can do, because he's one of the faster running backs if he can stay healthy, and he has had stretches of really solid play with the 49ers. So seeing what he does, I think that nobody was wowed by the Jerick McKinnon signing when it happened. When he first originally came to the Chiefs. And Jerick McKinnon is probably one of the 3 or 4 most important players on that 2022 offense, just because of how consistent he was as a pass catcher, and that unlocked something that the Chiefs offense really did not have last year. But as much as anything, I think one of the things to look for in training camp is how healthy is Isaiah Pacheco and how explosive is he. because yes, he was back last year. He got back from the injury, but he was clearly not himself.
Yeah, so far what we've seen from the OTAs and minicamp, Pacheco has been out there. He has looked really good. But when we always talk about the deep ball, I want to hit you a little bit with some coach speak here. A shot called is not a shot taken. We saw 2 years ago Patrick Mahomes' interception numbers, they were a lot higher than a lot of fans wanted. Last year he got those down. So, we want the team to go deep. They say they want to go deep, but the most important thing is winning. I know at OTAs, Mahomes was asked about, you guys weren't the top offense the last year or the year before. Was that frustrating to you? And he said, yeah, we want to be the top offense, but the number one thing that they want to do is win. Last year, they did get all the way to the Super Bowl. They did not have the offense that they wanted, and that's something that they certainly do want to correct. Now maybe moving to the defensive side of the football, this is a unit that is coached by maybe the best defensive coordinator in the entire National Football League, and if he's not the best, he is certainly a top 3, top 5 defensive coordinator in Steve Spagnuolo. There is a lot of change and a lot of different things maybe going on this year with the defense. Justin Reed no longer back. We're just going to have to see some different pieces here in the secondary again. Gabe, I know they've talked about moving Chris McDuffie more inside where he's so effective a couple years ago. We know they drafted 2 pass rushers that they want to pair alongside Chris Jones. Maybe what are you most looking forward to, or most interested in on the defensive side of the football going into camp?
Yeah, I think that the potential for Trent McDuffie to play in the slot is critical. I think that the Christian Fulton signing is one of those things that is probably underrated for most fans, but if he is what the Chiefs anticipate him being, that would be incredibly helpful. I'm really fascinated to see what the safety spot looks like, because you're at a spot where Brian Cook will be there. You'll have Jaden Hicks, and if they're going to be able to step up into that role, and part of the comfort of letting Justin Reed leave and letting him go, I believe he signed with the Saints the exact same deal as what he signed with the Chiefs when he originally came to Kansas City. So for the Chiefs, that's not necessarily like an overpay by New Orleans. And so if you're the Chiefs and you're comfortable letting him walk, and you decided that you were going to divert your resources to Nick Bolton, yes, you did that because clearly Steve Spagnuolo trusts Nick Bolton to a level that very few players have gotten that level of trust. And yeah, he has his flaws, but he's still one of the better linebackers in the league. At the same time, Justin Reed's leadership on the previous teams that he was around was critical, and so I think that the level of play that you get out of Jaden Hicks and Brian Cook is very, very critical, and obviously Mike Edwards is back, and so he's a guy who understands the system. I think that that's important, and who knows? We'll see. I think that the secondary, it was probably one of the issues at times throughout last season, but was only able to be exposed by certain teams. And honestly, the ironic thing or the funny thing is it wasn't always exposed by one of the better receiving corps. Like, I think that the Chiefs had a really solid game against the Bengals, largely because Trent McDuffie was able to take away Jamar Chase. But at the same time, Trent McDuffie doesn't always necessarily match up super well when he's on the outside, and he's getting matched up with like a Cortland Sutton, who's not traditionally thought of as one of the 5 best wide receivers in the league. Or
A.J. Brown.
Yeah, but he's got 2 matchups against him every season, and so if you get somebody who can play outside and match up better in that spot, it helps up with the Chiefs, particularly in matchups against the Broncos, I would think. But for as much as we talk about the secondary, and I'm not really as much worried about the linebacker group because of just the consistency of it. I think what you get out of Felix Anudike-Uzomah this year and Charles Menahue with a full offseason is critical in aiding Chris Jones, because without him, the pass rush was almost non-existent last season.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things that we're going to have to look at is just something that you touched on there is how is the team going to replace Justin Reed? Because was Justin Reed a superstar? No. Was Justin Reed an all-pro? No. But was Justin Reed a very, very, very good safety in the NFL? Yes, and he was so important to what the Chiefs did on defense, and just his character, the way he worked, the way that he showed other people how to be a pro, how to be a member of the Kansas City Chiefs. I mean, he was just here for 3 years, but the impact that he had on the defensive side of the ball, and especially that defensive back room, should not be forgotten. I know it was a couple weeks ago we were talking to Jaden Hicks out there at OTAs, and he's the guy. He's in line to take Justin Reed's spot. And Justin Reed, when Hicks was drafted, had to have known that, hey, this is potentially my replacement. This is a guy that's going to take take my job and I might have to go somewhere else. But Hicks was talking about how Justin Reed was just a pro's pro and took him under his wing, really trained him up, and prepared him for this moment. So Jaden Hicks, I know he had an interception last year against the Texans. There's a lot of potential there. The Chiefs are very, very excited to see what we have there. And then I really like what you said about signing of Christian Fulton. You go out there, you see him at practice. He is a very confident player. He fits right in with this group. And I think kind of the addition of him and then maybe also playing Chamari Connor on the outside and then moving McDuffie to the inside, I mean, we are going to be getting maybe a version of Spags' defense that we didn't get to see last year, because all of a sudden we might have, once again, one of the best blitzing corners in all of football, who's already an all-pro. But, I mean, McDuffie, I really think there is potential to still get better. This guy is already one of the best in the league, and there's so much that he can do. But I was talking to Neil and actually talking to some people with the Chiefs. They are very excited about their two defensive line picks in Ashton Gelati and Omar Norman-Lott. These are two guys. Gelati led the ACC in sacks as a junior, and then Omar Norman-Lott, he was a sub at Tennessee, but boy, this guy really runs. It sounds like his first step is unbelievable. And the other day, Chris Jones was really, really. Chris Jones knows how to play football, and he played in the SEC, as did Norman-Lott, and he was really talking about Norman-Lott. So we're going to be excited to see there how those guys kind of pair alongside Chris Jones, one of the best defensive tackles in football. Mm-hmm. Gabe, anything else we're leaving out there on defense or something?
I just can't believe it's already a month away, but that the football season just arrives very fast.
Yeah, I do have to say, I want to give kudos for the Chiefs for wrapping up OTAs right before all this heat got here. If we had been out there all week, trust me, the media would have been complaining. Neil Jones would have been coming back to the studio smelling terrible.
He already was.
Yeah, he already does. But even worse. But I'm really glad that the Chiefs got that all wrapped up last week, so we were not out there this week. All right, we have two more topics here before we get out of here today. The Royals are set to return home. Excuse me, a little something in my throat. Are set to return home tomorrow. They're off on Monday. A fun quirk of the schedule in the month of June, the Royals are off on every Monday, kind of like a minor league schedule.
Minor leagues.
On all these Mondays. But good for the Royals. They're obviously in the big leagues. But a 4-2 road trip away from home. They swept the Texas Rangers. Then they go to San Diego, win game one of that series, and then kind of stumble out of the gates or stumble out of town, I should say, and lose the last two. Gabe, there's the old saying in baseball, go 500 on the road, win the series at home. The Royals went 4-2 on the road trip, but for me, it does feel a little bit of a lost cause, because after they got the sweep against Texas, I got greedy. I wanted to see 5 wins. How would you assess the trip?
Yeah, I think that the order of wins, because it was 4 in a row at the start, and because of the way that Saturday and Sunday went, where Noah Cameron gave you another really solid start, Seth Lugo gave you an incredible start until he got the double allowed that ended his day on Sunday. You would hope that the offense would be able to provide enough runs to give you one of those 2 wins and get you out of there with a series win. I know that there's people who are mad about Angel Zerpa or Lucas Erceg hasn't been up to his standard necessarily, but every once in a while your relievers are not going to be perfect, and sometimes the offense has to deliver. The offense delivered on Friday. The offense delivered pretty much every game in Texas and responded. And I think that Friday night was really encouraging because you were up 4-0 and the bullpen didn't necessarily have it completely and gave the lead away. And then the Royals, honestly, it was one of the more reminiscent games of what last season's team looked like, where every time that the bullpen gave the lead back or allowed a game to get tied, then you know what, the heart of the order would come back and they would respond and they would put up some runs. And that's what Perez did in the 8th inning Friday night, or 9th inning. I don't exactly remember.
They got the win.
When they took the lead, yes. But they got the lead, and they added critical extra runs because it wasn't necessarily just 5, it was 6 to go up 2 and give Carlos Estevez the freedom to give up the solo shot to Manny Machado and still get the win. So yeah, overall, I mean, as you mentioned, you can't complain about winning road trips against 2 teams that are in Texas is in kind of the same spot Kansas City's in, where they're hopeful to be a wild card team, and San Diego's in a spot where they definitely expect to be a playoff team in the National League. And if anything, if there's another positive to hold from it, it would be that you swept the AL team and you got 1 of 2 from the NL team, because the Padres is not as consequential to lose to. But what you can say is among these teams that the Royals are competing against for AL wildcard spots, they're 3-0 against the Rays, and they get from late April when they went to Tampa Bay.
Noah
and
Cameron's
they get
major league debut.
And they get Tampa Bay in Kansas City this week. So that's a pretty critical set of games. And yes, they're 3-0 against the Rangers on the road, and they'll get Texas coming to Kansas City later this season. So those are critical, and I think that they have some ground to make up because they've lost several games to teams in the AL Central. But now the AL East and the AL West have kind of stepped up in the way that the Angels and the Rangers and the Rays and the Blue Jays are all kind of into it, and the Royals so far have done pretty solidly against those teams. And we're almost at the halfway point, and they are right in the conversation for a playoff spot. But I think it was a very encouraging road trip, as much as there was still some disappointment.
Yeah, this is such a tough team to evaluate because here we are almost halfway through the season. I think 78 games on the dot, 38-40, 2 games below 500, but we've seen them, I think they've been as many as 8-9 games above 500. I mean, it just is a roller coaster season with these guys. And we've talked about this literally since the very first week of the season. There just is no consistency with this group. Like so far it really seems like when the bats are hot, the pitching is not. When the pitching is good, the bats are cold. And just as we saw this last week in these last 2 days out there in San Diego, Noah Cameron goes out there, throws. I mean, that was good. His start was more than good enough to win a game. The Royals lose. Then you see this yesterday, Seth Lugo, 6 1/3, 1 run, 7 strikeouts. The Royals cannot find a way to support this guy and get the win for the team. It's really tough to see. But one thing I have actually, it just kind of baffles me, and I know fans really want a scapegoat, but this the hate that we're seeing on manager Matt Quatraro, to me, it really just they want to find a scapegoat, and they're trying to. The easiest person to blame is Q, but I know a lot of people are talking about some of these bullpen moves, like you talk about moving Zerpa in there on Saturday, Lucas Erceg last night. But the fact of the matter is, you have to play to the team's strength, and the team's strength is its starting pitching and its bullpen. And you can't. What are you going to do? Like not use some of your best players that are on your team, and those are relievers. Like Angel Zerpa hadn't allowed a run in like 15 games. Yeah. Lucas Erceg is one of the best relievers in all of baseball. Like, what was Quatraro supposed to do?
I think the only complaint you could wage yesterday was that it didn't make sense to not load the bases in the ninth and set up, because as good as Bobby is defensively, the play that he made, if he makes that to the next batter, he's spinning and throwing home, and all you need to do is have the throw beat the guy, and it's a force play. Whereas he had to spin, make a perfect throw, and get a tag. Or, who knows, maybe there's somehow you get a double play ball. But pitching with the open base to Jose Iglesias, who had already beaten you in when
he was a Royals killer yesterday.
Yeah.
He was a Royals killer.
That didn't make sense to me. But yes, to your point, Zerpa had been pitching really well over the last month. Lucas Erceg, you're going to trust. Carlos Estevez, you're going to trust. Daniel Lynch has had a solid season. You're going to trust him to get some outs. You're going to have to. That's what baseball is, and you can't win every game. I thought that was the only thing that you could complain about. Not that they took Seth Lugo out too early, because his numbers do go up third time through the order, and Jackson Merrill had just ripped a double off of him to start that inning. So, yeah, that is what it is. I think that one of the most encouraging signs of the entire road trip is how Bobby Witt Jr. was hitting. A lot of solid contact, a lot of base hits, and specifically a lot of power with doubles and home runs against the Rangers and against the Padres on Friday night. So I think hopefully that translates to coming back to the K and a big series against the Rays and a big series against the Dodgers, but they need more of that from Bobby Witt Jr.
Yeah, they certainly need everyone to be better. I know that, that in the ninth inning where they did not load the bases, that was, you could make a very, very strong argument that was not the right managerial decision. But, I mean, the fact of the matter is, guys, no manager is going to go 100% on all his decisions. Everyone in every profession, all over the planet, every job, everyone makes mistakes. And it's just like, I see this hate on Quatraro, and it's like, what do you want? Like, they're not going to fire him in the middle of the season. Who are they going to replace him with? They don't have anybody to replace him. And then in addition to that, like the team loves this guy. Like the players love playing for him. The pitchers, it's a great rapport. I mean, and then did we just forget about what happened last year when the Royals won 95 games lost more than 100 games 2 years ago and won a playoff series the next game? I mean, he's the same guy, and it's just the players, the output is not the same. And so it really is baffling to me. But a 6-game homestand coming up starting tomorrow, Tuesday.
Chris Bubic on the mound.
Yeah, Chris Bubic on the mound. Has the 5th best ERA in all of baseball. 3-game set against the Rays, and then a 3-game set against Shohei Ohtani and the LA Dodgers. Guys, you guys have got to get out to the ballpark for that one. I mean, Shohei Ohtani, this is one of the best guys that's ever played sports. This is why we are all sports fans. This is why we watch baseball, why we watch football, why we watch basketball, is to see athletes and players like this. He is coming right here to Kansas City, in our city. Go out to the Kauffman Stadium and see him. All right, one more topic. We got a couple more minutes here before we get out of here at 6 o'clock, but the KC Current re-signed for Michelle Cooper to a 3-year deal. She was so she's with the team now through the 2028 season. She was once the number 2 overall pick in the draft, but she has really blossomed into a superstar in the NWSL. This year she got her first call-up to the U.S. Women's National Team, and her and Timwa Chawinga have really developed some rapport. Gabe, kind of where I want to lead with this discussion is how cool is it to see just the development of Cooper maybe from day one when she was drafted here to Kansas City to the player that she has become with this organization?
Yeah, I think that it's a good sign in terms of the stability of the franchise that someone who was highly invested in is sticking around for several years and has 3 years, or will have 3 years down with the club and 3 more years to come. And as you mentioned, has really stepped up her game in terms of getting that first appearance with the women's national team, getting her first goal with the senior team, and having that player attached to Kansas City is really good. I think it's one of those things that is very encouraging in a season of a lot of positivity in terms of results on the field, but despite that, a lot of injury throughout. She's been one of the mainstays and main forces helping this team, so I think it's well deserved.
It's very cool to see kind of how Michelle Cooper has really blossomed into the player that she has become, and Vlatko had mentioned a couple of weeks ago how she's really only going to get better. But to me, the Current really are the it franchise of the NWSL. Currently, they have 6 players that are called up to national team rosters. There's only 11 players that can play on the field in soccer at one time. And the Current would have 7 players called up if Dabinia wasn't hurt. I'm sure Brazil would love to have her. So it's like when you go out to CPKC Stadium and you're watching the KC Current, like it legitimately is like a same sport comparison but different league. It's like you're watching, in my opinion, like Barcelona or Real Madrid, just because they have so many of the best players like on the planet on their team right here in Kansas City. Michelle Cooper, one of those young stars. Very cool to see her develop and sign that 3-year extension. Very excited to see what happens with her and the rest of her career in Kansas City. The Current, just one more note on them, they have 11 wins this year, which is already their second most in a regular season in franchise history, and we just got to the break. So this team absolutely loaded. Very cool to see. But Gabe, I think that's pretty much all we got. Anything left out? Anything else you want to say? We got it. All right, so Royals off today. Training camp dates were announced. Just so that you guys know, first practice, July 22nd, but that one's for season ticket members only. The first one open to the public, July 23rd, coming up in just about a month as the Chiefs begin their road to redemption, trying to get back to a 4th Super Bowl in a row. All right, thanks for watching tonight, guys. Take care.